Sometimes, all it takes is a little patience and a simple smile to change everything, perhaps even the world itself. The city's nightlife was alive as always, filled with the usual buzz of energy, loud conversations, and flashing lights. Among the countless bars lining the streets, one particular spot stood out, a well-known refuge in the neighborhood. This was a place where people came together, seeking a moment of escape from their daily struggles. It wasn't just a bar. It was a gathering space for those who wanted to unwind, share drinks, and engage in conversations that ranged from lighthearted to deeply personal. Tonight, however, would be different. Inside, the atmosphere was noticeably calmer than usual. Soft music played in the background, blending with the quiet hum of voices exchanging words over their drinks. Small groups of patrons sat at their tables, lost in conversation, while the bartender moved skillfully behind the counter, pouring drinks with practiced ease. In the dimly lit corner of the bar, a woman sat alone, her presence both intriguing and commanding. She was a black woman, dressed in a way that balanced effortless elegance with casual comfort. There was something captivating about her, something unshaken, untouchable. As she took a slow sip of her drink, her eyes moved thoughtfully across the room, scanning her surroundings with quiet observation. Though she didn't speak, her expression carried a calm confidence, a self-assurance that made her stand out. No one in the bar knew her name. At that moment, the door creaked open, and in stepped a man named Steve. His entrance wasn't dramatic, yet it shifted the energy in the room. Dressed in a stylish shirt, he looked like someone who had made an effort to appear well put together, but there was an undeniable tension in his stance. He took a brief moment to glance around before making eye contact with the bartender. With a nod to himself, as if affirming his own presence, Steve slowly approached the counter. He moved with purpose, yet there was a stiffness to his steps, a hint of restrained aggression. His gaze flickered across the patrons before landing on the woman in the corner. Without looking away, he placed his order. "Give me a beer." His voice was firm, yet there was an underlying edge to it. Then, his next words fell like a sudden, unwelcome weight on the room. "Everyone here can have a drink, except for her." He gestured toward the woman, making his intentions unmistakably clear. A brief silence passed. The bartender, though momentarily taken aback, simply nodded and began preparing Steve's drink without question. Around the room, a few heads turned, but the reaction was subtle, muted. It was as if people were used to ignoring moments like this. The woman, however, remained completely unfazed. She merely glanced at Steve, her expression unchanged. Then, without a word, she lifted her glass and took another sip, as though his presence and his words were of no significance to her. Steve watched her, waiting for a response. But she gave him none. The air in the bar grew heavier, but no one openly objected. A few patrons awkwardly shifted in their seats, casting nervous glances toward the woman. Others, though aware of what was happening, turned their attention away, unwilling to get involved. Frustrated by her indifference, Steve spoke again, this time louder. "Drinks are on me. Everyone can have one. Except her." He practically spat out the last words, his irritation growing. "She doesn't count." This time, a few people stirred uncomfortably, but still, no one challenged him. The woman, on the other hand, remained unchanged. She didn't flinch. She didn't lower her gaze. Instead, she did something unexpected. She smiled. A small, knowing smile, as if Steve's anger meant nothing at all. As if his attempt to diminish her simply had no effect. That simple gesture seemed to drive him mad. Steve slammed his hand against the bar. "Why aren't you saying anything?" he barked, his voice echoing across the room. "You're just gonna sit there? You're not gonna react." The woman remained silent. Her calmness was like a mirror reflecting his rage, making it look even more ridiculous. Steve's breathing grew heavier. His anger wasn't just about her anymore, it was about control. He wanted to see her flustered, upset, shaken. But instead, she sat there, completely unbothered, making his outburst look foolish in contrast. The tension in the bar thickened. A few customers hesitated, glancing at one another as if considering whether to step in. But before anyone could, Steve made a decision. His patience had run out. With heavy steps, he marched straight toward the woman's table, stopping right in front of her. His hands balled into fists at his sides as he leaned forward, glaring at her. "Answer me," he demanded. "Why are you so quiet? Who do you think you are?" For the first time that night, the woman moved with purpose. She slowly raised her head, meeting Steve's eyes with an expression of unwavering composure. Then she finally spoke. "Thank you." 2 simple words. But they hit Steve like a brick wall. His brows furrowed in confusion. "What?" The woman tilted her head slightly, her calm smile never fading. "I said thank you." Steve's anger flickered for a moment, replaced by confusion. He was expecting defiance. He was expecting fear. But gratitude? That he didn't know how to handle. Before he could say anything else, the woman leaned forward slightly, her voice steady and firm. "You really want to know who I am?" she asked. Steve's glare hardened. "Yeah. Tell me." She set her glass down, folded her hands neatly on the table, and looked him directly in the eye. "I own this bar." A stunned silence fell over the room. Steve blinked, his expression momentarily frozen in shock. He took a step back, as if the ground beneath him had suddenly shifted. "You're the owner," he stammered. The woman nodded. "That's right." Steve looked around, as if expecting someone to contradict her. But no one did. The reality of the situation slowly sank in. The person he had tried to humiliate, the one he had dismissed so easily, was the very person in charge of the place he had walked into. Jasmine, the bar owner, took a deep breath and spoke again. "Does that bother you?" Her voice was calm, but her words carried weight. She glanced around the bar before continuing. "You see, real power isn't about shouting the loudest. It's not about controlling others. It's about patience. It's about knowing who you are and standing firm, even when others try to bring you down." Steve didn't respond. He simply stood there, his anger replaced by something else, something much heavier. One by one, the other patrons started to nod in agreement. A few even clapped. Slowly, the energy in the room shifted. Jasmine had won, not through anger, not through force, but through something far more powerful. Steve, left with nothing but the weight of his own actions, finally sat down, his rage deflated. That night, the lesson was clear. Strength isn't about dominance. It's about patience, dignity, and self-respect. And sometimes, just sometimes, a simple smile can be more powerful than 1,000 words. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. Let's continue to explore the real meaning of strength and humanity together.